I should have taken that left turn to Albuquerque.
All we are saying is give peace a chance. All we are saying is give peace a chance.
Peaceful alternatives.
And for a while there, it seemed like a Bush, well, especially before the NIE was, revealed. But before that, it seemed like Bush was taking a lot of his speeches before we went into Iraq, just taking that Q off and putting the N on, and those speeches were suddenly becoming Iran.
Oh, yeah.
They were very similar in tone, very similar in nature, and it was almost as if he wanted to go, put us on a march toward war again. Like we needed a third front in this war on terror, this so-called, like Sheri said, it's just a slogan war. We're fighting an ideal, and you cannot fight an ideal.
What do you think on that, Sheri? You think we're headed that way, or?
I'm afraid that there's probably a lot more war that is going to be happening that could be avoided. But I think it, again, goes back to the reasons that we're at this war. There are a lot of corporations that are making money at it, not only Halliburton, but the other contracting companies. I think that's another problem that I have with this war. If we're going to go in and rebuild a country, first of all, we need to find out how they want it to be rebuilt. And secondly, we need to assist them in rebuilding it. We don't bring all of our people over to pay them money so they can work in this really dangerous place and pay them 3 times what they would make here, when we should be providing jobs for people in Iraq to rebuild how they want to rebuild. So again, it just seems to come down to us profiting off of this war at the expense of a lot of other places. I don't know if wars, I personally think war should be obsolete, but again, I'm not necessarily a pacifist 100% either. I mean, if someone is attacking my family, I couldn't stop my instinct from trying to protect my children. If someone was trying to hurt me, I would certainly protect myself. I don't think that I don't think that's a bad thing. I respect people that are able to do that, but I also feel like it's a human instinct to react to that thing, to react to an attack.
Some of what's happening now, and so many of the people who continue to support the war, I've been amazed at, people say if women ran the world, there would be no wars, and I don't agree with that statement from what I've seen. No. And I've been shocked by young mothers with beautiful young children. They will actually look at the children and American women and say they would destroy villages on the suspicion that another country would be any threat to themselves. They're called security moms, and they helped elect George Bush in 2004 in Ohio and everywhere.
This march to war, though, in Iran, as a member of the peace community, you go around the country. In fact, when we were in Chicago, I noticed a lot of signs saying, don't go into Iran. I mean, there were almost as many don't go into Iran signs as there were get us out of Iraq signs. So it's a big issue within the peace community. Right?
Until recently, I questioned those signs, and we're keeping those signs. We're keeping the It's just too difficult. Iran is 3 times larger than Iraq. It's in much better condition. Iraq was a very failed state when we attacked it. We'd really weakened it extraordinarily since the first Gulf War. We really destroyed their infrastructure in Desert Storm. So and then with the sanctions, it was nowhere near capable of launching any kind of attack that would threaten the United States.
We can't go. We should not be in the business of building nations, and that's what Bush.
George W. Bush agreed with you in 2000.
That's right. When he was running for president, he goes, "We're not in the nation building."
Yeah, that's who we elected. It's not who we got. We should think about that as people give promises now. We should hold them.
Well, we look at Iran right now, and I believe that Iran, sometime in the near future, without our help, is probably going to collapse from the inside. And there's a lot of people that You see it all the time. They still want the American genes. They've got the American music. You know, a lot of these kids grew up with parents who lived under the Shaw, who had a much different
liberal
outlook.
society.
Yes, it was a much liberal society, and these parents have passed this down to their kids. So these kids know what their parents used to live under. And
they like our culture. They just don't like our current government.
That's right.
They really, and that's the thing people got to realize, must realize, that we are all one people on earth. We're all related, and that they like us. If there was a panel like this in Iran, hopefully there is, that we would get along very well.
But rebellion comes from within, not from without. That's where nation building comes from the inside. We have no business doing that.
Any thoughts on this, Bruce? You think that we can successfully bring democracy to the world with guns and bombs?
No, not at all. We can't bring peace to the world at the barrel of a gun. That doesn't work. And as far as bringing democracy there, we have a problem with democracy here. It seems like the electoral process is getting to be a joke, the way that it's been going, with the huge amount of discrepancies that happened in the voting in Ohio in 2004 could have changed the election if it had been done differently there.
I have regrets about both 2000 and 2004.
Certainly, concerns about democracy as far as that, whether, like in Florida, you have extremely close race, and then a Supreme Court coming in and deciding we're not going to count anymore. That seems to me like, an abuse of power. But also with military ballots, or, ballots that did get counted, or people that weren't allowed to vote because their name happened to be the same as a felon. So there's a lot of questionable activity, I think, that went into both of those elections as well. And I agree, there are huge problems with democracy, and if people around the world believe that this is how democracy works, I'm not sure we could convince them that it would be a good idea for them to establish, let alone for us to force it upon them.
We're talking about democracy and our level of military spending, and we kind of inevitably get onto the subject of empire, which really what people in other countries in this world are seeing are we have 750 overseas military bases in 130 countries. This is what the people of the world see. Any thoughts on that? But again, is this required for
I think at one point in time,
country?
It may have felt like a safety net for other countries that we had a presence there and we could be a protective guardian to them. But I think it's just gone the other way, where we have too much of a presence around the world. We aren't even able to protect our own interests and our own borders and our own residents of our country. So I think it's the pendulum's maybe just gone a little bit too far the other way. We tried to help. Maybe in the intent of it was good, that we want to be available to other people, but the fact that we've abused it and made ourselves at home as if everybody should just accept us and not resist the fact that we're in their country, whether they want us to be there or not.
The best laid plans of mice and men. It doesn't always go off like we want it to. And I don't believe it ever will.
There were people in some of the places where these 750 bases are. There's a book at the end of the table. Bruce has it here. I don't know if you can hold that up, Bruce. This is a very interesting book that we're outposts of empire, the case against foreign military bases. And again, this is something that really only started in I think 1898, so it's really not existed for the entire history of our country. And the quantity of these bases and the sizes of them just basically took islanders and said leave and took over their island. It's an interesting thing where I was reading recently, Indiana is only one of 6 states that allows hostile annexations, and there's a bill trying to prevent that. And I believe we should have possibly consider an amendment not to annex other countries against their will. I don't know, did anyone give us permission to build these permanent military bases in Iraq?
I believe Dick Cheney said it was okay.
There was no government at that time,
No.
so how could we ever have gotten permission to do all and to build the largest embassy in the world in one of the world's smaller countries?
I know there's been demonstrations in the past in the Philippines and in Okinawa against having our bases there, and presently there's been demonstrations in Italy against expanding our base there. So there are apparently several countries, at least, where the people there don't want our bases there.
I think the only reason that we still have bases in places like Okinawa and the Philippines and Italy, and why these demonstrations aren't going to make that much of a difference, is it boils down to the almighty dollar again. We're making a lot of money, or I should say, these countries, these villages around where these bases are, they're making buku bucks off of our soldiers. And so these localized governments do not want to see these bases go away, because it's going to take the economy right out from underneath a lot
The
of
governments make money. The people themselves
Right,
are
the
often
people
hurt.
don't. But the
Again,
businesses-
Iraq's a case in point. They're not letting Iraqis onto U.S. military bases, so they are not being employed in the rebuilding of their own country. Can you imagine how frustrating it must be for them to see foreign workers brought in to build something they don't want, something that wasn't there before?
When we were sitting around back in October, I believe it was October of 2005, when Cliff Kindy set up his little temporary
You have to give us an update on Cliff, too.
Camp Casey. But one of the things that Cliff said was that he believed that the best way to get out of Iraq was to employ the Iraqis.
Absolutely.
We're bringing in help from New Zealand. We're bringing in help from the Philippines, other countries. These guys are the ones that are doing the work over in Iraq. And Cliff said that a lot of the insurgency, the people who are planting the bombs, the people who are giving information to the insurgents about the location of the American troops, they're being paid to do this. And why are they being paid to do this? Why are they doing it anyway? Because they want to feed their families. And if we could give them jobs to sustain themselves and to feed their families, these people who are completely opposed to planting these bombs, that are doing it to feed their families, they'd have another way to feed their family, and we would cut down a big time on the insurgency.
Wasn't it strange? We dropped hundreds of thousands of pamphlets over Iraqi troops before the war. Just said, go home, disband, everything will be all right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. I mean, again, I've never understood why we didn't simply continue their salary and the payments they were receiving. I mean, again, what do you think about Iraq as it's always called a dictatorship, but really people seem to miss the fact that it was a socialist country, basically, that they were provided at free medical care, housing, food. They're pretty shocked sometimes, the Iraqis I've talked to here locally, about some of our systems. I mean, the sheriff never came and threw you out if you didn't pay the rent in Iraq. It did not happen. They're shocked by that.
Yeah.
What do you think, Roger?
Well, I was distracted here.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm easily distracted. Ask somebody else, and I'll get my.
Not a problem. That is not a problem. See, that will keep you in line there. No, just basically that they don't even understand our system. And again, is democracy just voting? I mean, again,
I don't believe it is. In fact, I believe democracy is what we're doing. When we get out there in the streets and we're holding up our signs, we're showing a fine example of democracy to the rest of the world at that point. We're showing them that, yes, we have freedom of speech. We have freedom to assemble. We have freedom of religion. We're supposed to have all these things. But we're out there in the streets and we're telling people, this war is wrong. We're stating our opinion, and we're trying to get other people to come over to our side. Do you think this is a way for us to end the war faster? Do you think we need more demonstrations like the one we went to up in Chicago? Do you think we need more national demonstrations?
absolutely. And again, that one of the strangest aspects occurred in the beginning of this current movement, where Bush uses the book of a person who says that what we're fighting for is so people have the right to express their dissent on their village square or courthouse green, And we actually ran into trouble on that point locally, which was just too ironic. Everything worked out. We have very good people here in Fort Wayne, but that it was a strange experience to think that for a time we're fighting for something in a foreign country. Again, a freedom that was tricky to obtain here. There isn't a protest zone near our airport, for instance. Cliff Kinney found that out. In other areas, people can protest near a military base. They were threatened with immediate arrest. And that if we went out there sometime here in 2008, we would simply be arrested. There wouldn't be a protest.
Speaking of Cliff, he's in Iraq.
How is he doing? Yeah, how's Cliff Kinney from North Manchester?
I believe Cliff's doing okay. Right now, he's up in the Kurdistan regional government area. He's up in that area near the Turkish border.
A hot area.
It is right now. In fact, he's with an organization called the CPT, the Christian Peacekeeping or Peacemaking Team, and they're thinking about using themselves right now as human shields again. This time to keep the Turkish bombs from falling. I don't know how that's going to work out. Excuse me. Also, his visa recently expired.
So, that could be a problem.
Yeah, and they've applied for their NGO, their non-governmental organization, the paperwork that they need to fill out to extend their visas. They're having a hard time getting it done right now.
He said the current government might not want real people. Americans think that Christians with guns, that's our missionaries here, and to have a local American go to Iraq without a gun is just kind of an interesting thing. It's something he's been doing since 2002, early before the war, and people find it shocking. Yeah, I think they must ask him, "Where's your gun?"
Well, Cliff was reading something that Cliff said. He said that he's not really sure whether they're just dragging their feet because of who Cliff is, or whether, which is what one of the local tribesmen that Cliff's been hanging out with said, well, this is the way it always is. You know, it's just slow.
Bureaucracy, but definitely that the recent bombing facilitated by the United States from Turkey on northern Iraq definitely shows that they are not a sovereign state, and that they're very much an occupied country. I mean, I don't believe we even told the central government that, by the way, Turkey is going to bomb the northern part of your country now, and actually physically enter in with troops. What do you think about that, Roger?
I think that is going on. We knew it, and
it continues.
It does continue.